I've been on the board about 16 years. I was actually on the board of the Air Museum, or brought on board when Ken Miles, who this facility was actually named after, when he was the president. And it was an honor at that time. I was the youngest guy on the board, and Bob Pond was still around, and we were basically operating as a World War II Air Museum. Bob had 14 aircraft here, and we really didn't do a lot other than that. As time goes on, people age. Bob unfortunately passed away, which with any private museum, as you and I have talked about, there are always challenges when you lose a founder, and the founder has the vision and the passion. A lot of times the people around him, once the leader passes away, they don't have that passion. And so we went through a period of about 4 or 5 years where we had to find our direction. I continued to stay on the board. I was involved in the theme park business at one point, although that was a long time ago. They rang me up and said, would you come in as a board member and essentially run our operations? We're a board operated facility, which is a little unusual, but it saves us some money and allows us to put more money into airplanes and in facilities. And so I came in about 7 years ago, and people talk about, we've changed overnight. It's really been about a 7-year process, and we operate on a 3-year revolving business plan. And so we kind of came in, figured out what we wanted to do and where the direction we wanted to go with the facility, and then kind of put that in a plan. And we're now done with 2 of those plans, and we're on our 3rd. And one of the big goals in there was to expand the museum, make it more relevant in the span of military history. And so we go from the Wright Flyer, which is over the door as you come in. We have a replica of the Wright Flyer, through World War II, and now all the way up to the Cold War, with the addition of the EA-6B Prowler, which flew in here and retired off the Bush. Behind me, you see a lot of our vintage aircraft. The aircraft directly behind me is the only complete F-100D outside the Air Force Museum. This is a flyable airplane. The F-104G next to it is an airworthy airplane. We don't operate what I would call heavy jet fighters. The largest or most aggressive airplane we operate is a T-33. These aircraft just require too much maintenance, and the other issue with them is just qualifying guys for them is really tough. Where do you qualify a guy in an F-104 or an F-100 and keep them current with an airplane like that? Part of it is currency, people flying them enough to know the airplane. But these aircraft are airworthy. In this hangar we also have an F-86, we have an F-84, we have an F-102 that started out more as an archaeology project. It was in Arkansas. It was the last available F-102 in the United States, and it was in pieces. It had been shipped to Arkansas for a museum, and when we got it, it was in pretty sad shape. We had to reskin the airplane. We had to rebuild most of the control surfaces. We fly 7 of our aircraft a year, which are all primarily World War II aircraft, with the exception of the T-33. That was another piece of our program that we had to stand up. We flew quite a bit with Bob. Bob's 14 aircraft are in a trust, and so those airplanes are preserved in the trust forever. But we own also a number of warbirds, and so we fly airplanes that the museum owns, which are like extremely rare airplanes, like the P-63, which was the 4th one off the line. I mean, it is an extremely rare airplane. P-51D, C-47, which is the largest aircraft we currently operate. And one of the challenges there was, again, when you fly and you have the training backbone in the organization, you really don't think about those skills until you lose them. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we lost all that skill over 5 years. So we had to completely rebuild the air department, completely rebuild all of the ground maintenance. And that took us about 3 years. But the idea was that if we told you date certain an airplane would be somewhere, the goal within the flight department, within that business plan, was to, okay, the airplane's going to be there at that time, at that place. And I don't think people really understand how big a challenge that is when you have to start dealing with the logistics and everything else. Obviously, people who operate warbirds know that, and then you have the safety issues and legal and everything else that's around that. When we designed this hangar, all of these aircraft were put into CAD in their dimensions, and then we laid out the floor plate, and then we figured out what we were going to do as far as spacing and the interior exhibits. This hangar pretty much is laid out the way that we wanted. With the F-102, the wedge as you come in, what I call it when you come in, that was specifically designed for that airplane. And there were some harrowing moments where I said, I'm just going to go get lunch when you're moving the airplanes into the facility, and call me when you're done, because I just can't watch. And so everything fit. If it didn't fit, especially with the size of that 102, we would have a serious problem. But we planned on having all these airplanes in here, and so we laid them out, and then we figured out exhibit-wise how we wanted people to flow. This hangar from original design in 1988 is about 40% larger, so that was a little bit of a challenge as well. I had to go back, we had to entitle the entire facility, so there were quite a few challenges. This is all private money, there's no public money in this hangar whatsoever. So we had to raise the $2.5 million, and we had a number of donors involved in that. And that was another real challenge, because going back to when we started with the founder, when you lose that founder's support, you have to line up a whole new donor base. And so we had to completely rebuild the donor base from scratch and bring in new people that understood the vision. And also, with a facility like this, when people give you that kind of money, people need to be proud of it, to where they're going to bring somebody here and say, I invested in this. So there was quite a bit of pressure to make sure that it fitted out the right way, and then acquiring the airplanes and all that kind of stuff. The Miles family, which is Ken's family, his son Ross was also an F-16 pilot, so continuing the tradition, has been incredibly supportive. And we have 320 docents who are all retired military, from rocket scientists to combat pilots and all kinds of different airplanes, that kind of fill out the spectrum. So what we've ended up with now is a facility that has 86,000 square feet under roof, which is about the size of a super Walmart. I'm not sure if it's the largest facility in California, but it's certainly under roof one of the biggest now in California. I'd say cross-section of aircraft, we have a good representation of airplanes. We're really solid. Bob did a tremendous job on the World War II side. We have great World War II airplanes. We have nearly the entire Century series of fighters now in our collection, and we've really started with good Cold War aircraft with excellent examples of like the EA-6B. We're in the process of restoring our F-14 back to its late 70s color scheme, and so we're really looking at kind of the whole end of the spectrum. The museum is open all year with the exception of Thanksgiving and Christmas Day from 10 to 5, so come on down and see us. We fly 30 programs a year during season, from about October to the end of May, which is our flower drop. Our flower drop is our big kind of closing for the season. So any Saturday you're down here, you're going to see a propeller moving or a jet or something. We fly. And if you want to learn about aviation, come on over here and we'll teach you a bit.